I was 60 years old when my life turned upside down. My daughter, with promises of a better future, went to the United States and left me with my little granddaughter. No money in my pocket, no support, a house full of bills, and a heart full of doubts. I thought, how will I manage? I, who had already faced so many difficulties, found myself facing an immense challenge. And as if the weight of life wasn't enough, my granddaughter was now my responsibility. How was that possible? I'm a simple woman who's always worked hard, and I've seen life from every angle, but nothing prepared me for the desperation of that moment. My granddaughter was my only reason to live, but I no longer knew where I'd find the strength. And then, something unexpected happened. A request made by mistake, something simple and unintentional, changed everything. And I don't want you to miss what happened next. Stay until the end of the story. Each moment will surprise you, and you'll understand how a simple gesture can change the course of an entire life. If you're watching us now, leave in the comments where you're watching from, because at the end of this month, I'll be doing an incredible giveaway for the participants. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. New stories are coming, and you won't want to miss them. Now, get ready to follow this journey of overcoming, mystery, and revelations that will leave you breathless. Let's begin. My daughter announced one day that she was moving to the United States for a great opportunity, leaving her little daughter with me. At first, I didn't know how to take the news. I had already raised my children, and I thought that phase of my life was over. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and suddenly, I found myself alone with my granddaughter. My daughter promised that she would call every day, that she would send money, that everything would be fine. She said it would only be for a while. But as the days passed, I realized that the promises were just empty words. I, a woman in my 60s, had to carry a responsibility I hadn't planned for. With my daughter gone, I didn't know where to turn. I had my own life to deal with, and now I had a little girl who needed me. I wasn't prepared for this. I couldn't even figure out how to feed her. The little money I had wasn't enough to take care of both of us, and the weight of the world seemed to rest on my shoulders. What had my daughter done to us? How could she leave like that, without a second thought? My heart ached with every passing day. But as I watched my granddaughter play in the corner of the room, so innocent, so unaware of the difficulties we were facing, I knew one thing for sure. I would never give up on her, no matter what. The promise of daily phone calls and money sent never came true. At first, I waited patiently, believing that my daughter would keep her word. But the days turned into weeks, and then months, with no calls, no money, nothing. I began to grow suspicious, but I didn't want to believe it. A mother wouldn't do that to her child, would she? Still, deep down, I knew something was wrong. The silence from her side became unbearable. I tried to keep my fears to myself, not wanting to worry my granddaughter, but how long could I keep pretending everything was fine? The bills kept piling up, the money I had was running out, and I was doing everything I could to provide for the little one. Every time I went to the grocery store, I had to make impossible choices, buying just enough to get by, cutting back on what I really needed to make sure she was taken care of. I started questioning myself. Was I being too harsh on my daughter? Was there a good reason for her absence? But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being lied to. And in my gut, I knew the truth. Alone, I tried to juggle 2 jobs: rent, medication, and of course, taking care of my granddaughter. I had no idea how I was supposed to keep all of this together. There were days when I felt like I couldn't breathe, and I would stay awake late into the night worrying about how I was going to make it. Every time I looked at her sweet little face, I knew I couldn't let her see the stress I was feeling. But how could I hide the truth from her when my own heart was breaking? It seemed like every time I tried to get a handle on things, something else would come up. I couldn't afford to buy what we needed, And sometimes I had to make the painful decision to skip meals so I could stretch the little money I had for her. How had my life become this? How had I ended up in this situation, taking care of my granddaughter without any support, alone in the world? But there was no other option. I had to keep going. I had no choice. Every time I felt like I was at my breaking point, I'd look at her, and somehow I found the strength to keep moving forward. I didn't know how, but I knew I had to. At the grocery store, reality hit me hard. The formula cost more than the little money I had left. My hands trembled as I stared at the price tag. I had to make a choice, one I wasn't prepared to make. Could I go without something I needed to make sure she had enough? Could I swallow my pride and ask for help? But then I remembered. The shame, the deep, suffocating shame that I wasn't able to provide for my own granddaughter. How had I come to this point? The thought of asking anyone for help felt like swallowing broken glass. It wasn't just the money, it was the feeling of failure, of not being able to give her what she deserved. What kind of grandmother was I if I couldn't even feed her properly? I had no choice but to leave the store with only half the groceries I needed. I promised myself I'd figure something out. I'd find a way to make it work. I didn't know how, but somehow I always had. The weight of it all sat heavily on my shoulders, but I didn't have time to dwell. I had to stay strong. For her. In my desperation, I sent a message asking for $30, but I sent it to the wrong number. I had meant to send it to a friend I hadn't spoken to in years, someone who I thought might help, but I had made a mistake. The message didn't go where I intended, and I didn't even notice it at first. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the screen. Then I realized what I had done. I can't believe I did this, I thought. I was ashamed of myself. The message wasn't meant for a stranger. It was supposed to go to someone who could help me, not someone I didn't know. But then, as I was about to delete it, a thought crossed my mind. Maybe this was a sign. Maybe this was the help I'd been waiting for. Before I could even process what had happened, I received a response. It wasn't a simple yes or no, but a strange phrase. You are stronger than you think. I didn't know what to make of it. Was it a message of hope, or was it just a mistake? I couldn't understand, but it intrigued me. Something about it felt different. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure of what to do. You are stronger than you think. What did that even mean? I had no idea who had sent it. The number was unfamiliar, and there was no way to trace it back to anyone I knew. Was it a joke? Was someone playing with my emotions at a time when I could barely hold it together? I almost ignored it, thinking it was some random response from a wrong number. But something about those words tugged at me. Was I strong? Did I even know what that strength meant anymore? I had been through so much, carried so much weight, and yet here I was, struggling to make ends meet for a child who didn't understand the gravity of the situation. I decided to respond. It felt strange, but I typed, "Who is this? And what do you mean by that?" I waited, almost expecting nothing in return. But to my surprise, the phone buzzed again, and the reply was even more cryptic. You are stronger than you think. I didn't know what to make of it. Was it a message of hope, or was it just a mistake? I couldn't understand, but it intrigued me. Something about it felt different. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure of what to do. You are stronger than you think. What did that even mean? I had no idea who had sent it. The number was unfamiliar, and there was no way to trace it back to anyone I knew. Was it a joke? Was someone playing with my emotions at a time when I could barely hold it together? I almost ignored it, thinking it was some random response from a wrong number. But something about those words tugged at me. Was I strong? Did I even know what that strength meant anymore? I had been through so much, carried so much weight, and yet here I was, struggling to make ends meet for a child who didn't understand the gravity of the situation. I decided to respond. It felt strange, but I typed, "Who is this? And what do you mean by that?" I waited, almost expecting nothing in return. But to my surprise, the phone buzzed again. The next morning, I woke up to a strange alert on my phone. A deposit had been made to my account, thousands of dollars. I couldn't believe my eyes. My first thought was that it was a mistake, but when I checked the details, everything seemed legitimate. The bank confirmed the transfer, and the money was there, in my account. But how? Where had it come from? And why? I looked at the screen, then back at my granddaughter, still sleeping peacefully in her bed. I felt a strange mixture of disbelief and gratitude, but also confusion. How could this happen? Who had done this? There was no explanation, no name, no note. It was just there. I tried to process it, but I couldn't. The amount was more than enough to cover everything: the rent, the bills, the medications. It was the lifeline I had been desperately praying for. Yet the mystery of who had sent it lingered in my mind like a heavy fog. I couldn't shake the thought, was this some kind of miracle, or was there something more to this than I understood? As I sat there, wondering about the strange turn of events, I received another message. This time, the words were simple: "Take care of her. I'm watching over you." No name, no explanation, just those words. That afternoon, a package arrived at my door. I hadn't ordered anything, and I had no idea who would be sending me something. When I opened it, I couldn't believe my eyes. Inside, there were baby clothes, food, and a note. The clothes were simple but soft, the kind I would have chosen for my granddaughter myself. The food was exactly what we needed, things I could barely afford to buy. But the note, oh, the note! It was short, written in elegant handwriting, "For the warrior." It didn't make sense. Who would send something like this, especially when I hadn't asked anyone for help? The note was signed with nothing but those words. There was no name, no signature, just that message. I stood frozen for a long moment, looking at the items, the note, and the surrealness of the situation. Was this the same person who had sent the money, or was it someone else entirely? The kindness was overwhelming, but the mystery only deepened. The more I tried to make sense of it, the more questions I had. My heart raced. Who knew what I was going through? Who had been watching us? And why? And why now? It felt like there was something bigger at play, something I couldn't quite grasp, but it was happening to me. As I looked at the package, a mix of gratitude and fear consumed me. How could this stranger know what we needed? And why had they sent it without a word, without any explanation? Part of me felt blessed, but another part of me couldn't shake the unease. This kindness, as wonderful as it was, felt strange. It was too much, too personal. It was almost as if this person knew exactly what was happening in our lives, as though they had been watching us for a long time. I sat there, my hands shaking slightly, as I folded the baby clothes and put the food away. Every item seemed to carry a weight I couldn't fully understand. It wasn't just the generosity, it was the mystery behind it. Who would help us like this, without even knowing us, without asking for anything in return? It didn't make sense. And the note, "For the warrior," the words echoed in my mind. Was I really a warrior, or was I just a grandmother doing what had to be done? And who had written those words? The uncertainty gnawed at me, but I knew one thing for sure: my granddaughter was safe, at least for now. I had to protect her no matter what. Still, as I locked the door that night and tucked Evelyn into bed, a shiver ran down my spine. Who was watching us? And why did it feel like this was just the beginning of something much bigger? Over the next few days, it became impossible to ignore the whispers. I could hear them, soft but unmistakable, coming from the neighbors as they gathered in the courtyard, casting curious glances toward my window. At first, it was subtle, just a few glances here and there, but then it escalated. People were noticing the packages. They were noticing the sudden change in my situation. I tried to ignore it. I didn't want to give them anything to talk about, but how could I? The strange gifts and the mysterious deposit were like a spotlight shining on me. The whispers grew louder. "Have you seen what she's getting? She doesn't even know who's sending it." I could hear them from my window, their voices drifting in on the wind, a constant reminder of how much my life had changed in such a short time. But it wasn't just the neighbors. I could feel the weight of their eyes on me whenever I stepped outside. It was as though they knew something I didn't. They weren't just curious. They were suspicious. And I couldn't blame them. It didn't make sense. Who would send so much without wanting something in return? But I couldn't let it shake me. I couldn't let them see that their whispers were getting to me. My priority was Evelyn, and I would do anything to keep her safe. But the question kept echoing in my mind. Who were these people, and what did they want from us? One evening, as I was putting Evelyn to bed, my phone rang. It was my daughter, calling from the United States. Her voice, once so full of energy and hope, now seemed distant, strained. She started by asking about Evelyn, pretending to care, but her tone was off. There was no warmth in her voice, no real concern. It was like she was just going through the motions. We spoke for a few minutes, but it didn't take long for her to start changing the subject, quickly moving on to talk about herself. She said she was doing well, that the job was going great, but there was always a sense of evasion whenever I asked about her return. She avoided the question, distracting me with stories about the amazing opportunity she was supposedly having. Something felt wrong. I had been a mother for many years, and I knew when someone was lying. I could hear it in her voice, the way she avoided eye contact when we spoke. She wasn't doing well at all. The truth was buried beneath layers of excuses, but I wasn't sure I was ready to confront it. The woman I had once trusted was now a stranger, hiding behind a mask of lies. But as I hung up the phone, I felt the sting of betrayal. She had left me with Evelyn, and now, months later, I was starting to see the truth. She wasn't just far away, she was running from something, and I was left to pick up the pieces. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept tossing and turning, the weight of everything pressing down on me. The conversation with my daughter was still fresh in my mind, and the feeling of betrayal gnawed at my insides. But it wasn't just that. It was the unease that had been building up inside me for weeks. It was as if the universe was trying to tell me something, but I couldn't quite put the pieces together. Then, around midnight, I heard something. It was faint at first, just the sound of tires rolling on the gravel road outside, but then the car stopped. I couldn't see it from my window, but I could feel its presence, like it was waiting. My heart raced, and a cold chill ran down my spine. Who would be out there, in the middle of the night near my house? I tried to calm myself. It was probably nothing, just someone passing by, but the anxiety wouldn't go away. I lay there in the dark, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound to stop. But it didn't. The car remained parked in front of the house for what felt like hours. I had to know what was going on. Slowly, I got out of bed and peeked through the window. There, under the dim streetlight, I saw a figure standing by the car. My breath caught in my throat. Who was that? Why were they there? And why did I feel like something was about to change forever? The next day, I received a small package. It was no bigger than a jewelry box,
and it felt strangely heavy in my hands. As I carefully opened it, my heart skipped a beat. Inside was a beautiful old medal. It was intricately designed, with a photo inside of it. At first, I couldn't make sense of the image, but then I realized it was me and Evelyn, taken at a moment when we hadn't even noticed the camera. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. How had someone gotten that photo? I didn't remember anyone taking it. It had been a casual day, just me and my granddaughter enjoying a quiet afternoon at the park. But now, here was the proof that someone had been watching us, someone who knew far more about our lives than I could ever have imagined. The medal felt like a token of something, an acknowledgement of what I had been through maybe, or a reminder of the role I had taken on as Evelyn's protector. But the more I thought about it, the more questions it raised. Why this photo? Why now? What did it mean? As I held the medal, my fingers trembling, I couldn't ignore the fear building in me. This person, whoever they were, was watching us, and they weren't done yet. The next message came a few days later. I had been anxiously checking my phone, wondering if there would be more strange surprises, when I saw the new notification. It was from the same number, the one I didn't recognize. This time the message was short, yet it made my heart race. "Meet me at the park. I have answers for you." I hesitated. Who was this person? Why did they want to meet me? I had no idea what to expect, but everything in me screamed that I had no choice but to go. This wasn't just about the money or the gifts anymore. This was about understanding who had been watching us, who had been secretly helping us, and why they had chosen to remain anonymous. I looked at Evelyn, who was playing with her toys in the living room, blissfully unaware of the tension surrounding us. I took a deep breath, knowing that I was stepping into the unknown. I had to go. For her, for me, I had to know the truth. As I walked toward the park that afternoon, the familiar sounds of children playing and the chirping of birds in the trees did nothing to calm my racing heart. I was on edge, filled with a mix of fear and curiosity. Who was this stranger, and why had he been so kind to us? When I reached the park, I scanned the area. There, sitting on a bench under a large oak tree, was an elderly man. He looked calm, collected, as if he had been waiting for me all along. His eyes met mine, and I knew immediately that this was the person who had been helping us.
I walked over to the bench, my steps slow and cautious. The elderly man stood up as I approached, his eyes kind but piercing. He had a calmness about him, a sense of quiet authority that immediately put me on edge. As I sat down beside him, he didn't say a word at first, just looked at me with an expression that seemed both knowing and distant, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. After a few moments, he finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "You're wondering who I am," he said, and his words felt like a weight being lifted from my shoulders. "All I can tell you is that I've been watching over you, for a reason." I felt a chill run down my spine. Watching over me? I couldn't understand, but I was too far gone now, too invested in this mystery. I had to know. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The man sighed deeply, looking away for a moment, as if collecting his thoughts. "My name is Daniel," he said finally, turning to meet my gaze. "And the reason I've been helping you is simple. I promised someone long ago that I would help families like yours, people who are in need, people who deserve better than what life has given them." I sat there, stunned. Who was this man? Why did he care about me and my granddaughter? What did he mean by promising to help families like ours? "You're not alone," Daniel continued, his voice softer now. "I know it doesn't seem like it, but you're not. I'm here for you. I'll always be here." Daniel's words echoed in my mind long after I left the park that day. I didn't know what to think. This man who had come out of nowhere claimed to have been watching over us, helping us, and yet I still couldn't quite wrap my mind around it. He said he had promised someone to help families like mine, but who was this someone, and why had he chosen us? The more I thought about it, the more confused I became. But as time passed, Daniel's presence began to make sense in a way. He wasn't just some random stranger. He had a purpose. I still didn't understand the full extent of his involvement in our lives, but there was a sense of peace that came with his promises, a peace I hadn't felt in a long time. Days passed, and Daniel kept in touch. He didn't push, didn't intrude, but he was there when I needed him, always offering words of encouragement or a helping hand when things seemed too much. But one day, as I sat in my living room, looking at the bills that piled up on the table, I began to feel the weight of my daughter's absence once more. She wasn't coming back. It was becoming clearer every day, and as much as it hurt, I had to accept the truth. She had abandoned us, left us with no resources, no support, no plan. She had promised so much, but in the end, she had broken every promise. Daniel had stepped in when no one else did, and I realized for the first time that maybe I hadn't just been waiting for my daughter's return. Maybe I had been waiting for a chance at redemption, both for me and for my granddaughter. A few days after our meeting, Daniel asked me to meet him again. This time, he brought something with him, something that would change everything. He sat me down and, without saying much, handed me a stack of papers. "These are for you," he said softly. "You need to see the truth." I felt my heart drop as I looked at the papers. It wasn't just a few documents, it was a full dossier. As I flipped through the pages, my eyes widened. There were photos, bank statements, and letters, proof that my daughter wasn't living the life she had promised. She wasn't working in the United States. In fact, she had been avoiding paying debts, hiding from creditors, and, worst of all, running away from responsibilities. Daniel explained everything with patience, his voice calm. "Your daughter has been in trouble for a long time," he said. "She wasn't honest with you. She wasn't taking care of herself. And she certainly wasn't thinking about the promises she made to you or your granddaughter. She's been hiding from her own mess." I couldn't believe what I was reading. How could she do this to us? To me? To Evelyn? The betrayal was deeper than I had ever imagined. But as I looked at Daniel, his eyes kind and steady, I realized something. Despite everything, despite the lies, despite the broken promises, I wasn't alone. He had shown me the truth, and now it was up to me to decide what to do with it. My daughter had failed us, but I still had a chance to protect Evelyn, to make sure she didn't have to go through the same mistakes. I sat there, staring at the pile of documents in my hands, my heart aching with every page I turned. The weight of the truth hit me like a ton of bricks. All this time, I had been thinking that my daughter was out there, building a life, working hard, trying to make a future for us. I had believed in her promises. I had trusted her, even when the silence became unbearable, even when the days stretched into months without a word from her. But now I saw the truth. She hadn't been working. She hadn't been building anything. She had been running away from her responsibilities, hiding from the life she had created. She had left me with Evelyn, knowing full well that she had no intention of returning to care for us. The tears threatened to spill over, but I fought them back. I had to stay strong for my granddaughter. The papers laid out everything: the deaths she had racked up, the lies she had told, the people she had been avoiding. It was a cruel reality, and it made me wonder, how could I have been so blind?
How could I have let her take advantage of me for so long? But then, as I thought about it more, something inside me shifted. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, it all became fuel for something more. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could change what would happen next. I wasn't going to let my daughter's mistakes determine Evelyn's future. I was going to fight for her happiness, for her safety, and nothing would stand in my way.
A few days later, Daniel came to visit again. He was quieter this time, as if something had shifted in him too. He sat across from me and, after a long pause, he finally spoke. "I've been helping you because I promised her," he began, his voice soft but steady. "But I can't do this forever. You have to make your own choices now. I can't fight your battles for you." I looked at him, trying to make sense of his words. Was he really leaving? What did he mean by fighting my battles? The weight of everything, my daughter's betrayal, my exhaustion, the responsibility for Evelyn, seemed to settle back onto my shoulders. "I want to help you," Daniel continued, "but I need to ask something of you first. Will you let me keep helping? Not because I have to, but because I believe in what you're doing?" His eyes searched mine, and I realized this wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about something deeper, something personal. He wasn't asking for repayment, he was asking for a commitment to stand tall, to be strong, and to face the future no matter how difficult it was. I nodded slowly, the weight of his request sinking in. "Yes," I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. "I'll let you help. I promise." Daniel smiled, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Then you've already taken the first step." And just like that, something inside me clicked. I wasn't alone in this anymore. Daniel's offer wasn't just a lifeline, it was a new beginning, a chance for redemption, for a fresh start, for both of us. Over time, I began to notice something changing between me and Daniel. It wasn't just about him helping us anymore. It was about the quiet bond that had formed between us, a connection built on mutual understanding, respect, and a shared sense of purpose. He wasn't just a stranger offering assistance, he had become someone I could rely on, someone who understood the weight of responsibility I carried. As days turned into weeks, Evelyn grew attached to Daniel, calling him Grandpa without any hesitation. It was as if she had always known him, as if he had always been a part of our family. I watched with a mixture of awe and gratitude as he played with her, telling stories and sharing moments of joy that she had so desperately needed. And even though I knew that Daniel wasn't her biological grandfather, there was something about the way he cared for her that made me feel like he was exactly what she needed. He wasn't just helping us financially, he was becoming a father figure in her life, filling a void I never thought could be filled. One evening, as we sat together in the living room, Evelyn snuggled up to him, resting her head on his shoulder. He looked down at her with such tenderness, and I saw the genuine love he had for her. It was a love that didn't ask for anything in return, a love that was given freely, without conditions. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Family wasn't just about blood. It was about the connections we make, the people who choose to stay by our side no matter what. Daniel had become a part of our family, and his presence in our lives was a gift I would forever treasure. Just when things were beginning to feel stable again, I received a call that sent my heart into a whirlwind. It was my daughter. She was back in town, and she wanted to see Evelyn. I could hardly believe it. After all this time, after everything that had happened, she was returning as though nothing had changed, as though she hadn't abandoned us. When I picked up the phone, her voice was sweet, apologetic, like nothing had ever happened. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she said. "I've missed you and Evelyn so much. I've been through a lot, but I'm back now. I want to make things right. I want to be a mother again." Her words were full of rehearsed sincerity, but something about the way she spoke, the lack of true emotion in her voice, told me it wasn't the full truth. She didn't sound like someone who had been through a transformative experience. She sounded like someone who had come back only because she was running out of options. I couldn't ignore the hurt, the anger that rose up in me. How dare she come back after everything, after leaving us to fend for ourselves, after lying to me for so long? I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how much she had hurt me, how much she had betrayed us. But I stayed quiet, knowing that I had to think carefully before I made any decisions. The truth was, I wasn't sure if I could trust her again. Could I just let her back into our lives after everything? Could I forget the way she had turned her back on us, leaving me to pick up the pieces? Or was it time to set boundaries, to protect my granddaughter from the same mistakes? The door had been opened, but I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through it. A few days after my daughter's return, she insisted on coming over to see Evelyn. I was torn, but I knew I couldn't put it off any longer. I had to face her, confront the woman who had caused so much pain and left me to carry the burden of her choices. When she arrived, I watched as Evelyn ran to her, her little arms wide open. For a moment, I wanted to believe that everything could go back to the way it was, that perhaps I had misjudged her. But then I saw it, the same emptiness in her eyes, the same distance in her voice. I didn't believe a word she said. We sat down together, and I couldn't hold back anymore. "How could you do this to us?" I asked, my voice trembling. "How could you just leave? You made promises, and you broke every single one of them." Her face flushed with guilt, but she quickly tried to cover it up with more lies. "I had to leave, Mom. I didn't have a choice," she said, looking away. "But I'm here now. I'm ready to fix things." But I wasn't buying it. I had seen enough. "No," I said firmly. "You don't get to come back after everything. You don't get to break my heart and then expect it to be fixed with a few empty words." For a moment, there was silence between us. And then the truth came out. She wasn't sorry at all. She wasn't here because she had changed or learned from her mistakes. She was here because her own life was falling apart. She needed help, and she thought she could manipulate me into giving it to her. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was right in front of me. She hadn't changed. She had just run out of excuses. The truth weighed heavy on me, and I knew I couldn't let Evelyn be exposed to the same heartbreak I had endured. My daughter's lies had shattered something inside me, and I couldn't, in good conscience, allow her to simply walk back into our lives as though nothing had happened. But the question remained, what was I going to do now? How could I keep my granddaughter safe while also being fair to her mother? I loved my daughter, no matter how deeply she had hurt me, but Evelyn's future was at stake. I had to make a decision that was going to change everything. For days, I wrestled with the idea of giving Evelyn back to her mother. I thought about all the pain my daughter had caused, but I also remembered the woman she once was, the woman I had raised, the woman who had once held her child close and promised to be there no matter what. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. I had changed. I had learned to trust my instincts, and my instincts told me that I couldn't let Evelyn go back to her mother. Not yet. Not when I wasn't sure she was ready to be the mother she promised she could be. In the end, the decision was clear. I couldn't risk Evelyn's well-being. As much as it hurt, as much as I wanted to believe in second chances, I had to protect my granddaughter. I couldn't trust my daughter to keep her safe. It was time to fight for what was best for Evelyn, and that meant not giving up on her, no matter how hard it was. As I sat with my decision, I knew the next step wasn't going to be easy. I had to fight for Evelyn's safety, for her future, and that meant going to court. I couldn't do it alone, not after everything my daughter had put us through. I needed help. I needed someone who could guide me through the process and ensure that my granddaughter's best interests were protected. That's when Daniel stepped in again. He didn't hesitate, didn't question the decision I had made. "I'll help," he said simply. "I've got the resources to support you in this. I'll cover the legal fees and I'll find you the best lawyer for the job." I was stunned. I had never expected this level of support, not from anyone. It was one thing for him to offer help in the past, but this was different. This was a fight, and he was standing by me as if my cause was his own. Daniel introduced me to a lawyer he knew, someone who was experienced in family law and who had a reputation for winning cases like mine. The lawyer was kind, professional, and seemed genuinely concerned about Evelyn's well-being. As we sat in the office discussing the details of the case, I felt a small sense of relief. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't carrying this burden alone. But I knew this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be long, filled with difficult decisions and painful moments, but I was ready. I had to be. For Evelyn, I would do whatever it took. It didn't take long for my daughter to realize I wasn't going to back down. She came to my house one afternoon, her face pale, her eyes wide with desperation. She was pleading, begging me to let her take Evelyn back. But this time, there was something different in her tone. It wasn't just guilt, it was fear. "I can't lose her," she said, her voice breaking. "I need her. I need to be a mother again." But I knew better now. I had seen the signs, the lies, the broken promises. She wasn't asking for Evelyn back because she had changed. She was asking because she was running out of options. She was desperate, trapped in the mess of her own making, and she thought I would be the one to save her. "You don't get to manipulate me anymore," I said, my voice firm. "You don't get to come back and pretend that everything is fine. You've made your choices, and now you have to live with them." She cried, and I could hear the pain in her voice, but I remained steady. I couldn't let myself be swayed by her tears. It was hard, so hard, but I had to think of Evelyn, of her future. I couldn't let her go back to someone who had already proven to be unreliable, someone who had put her own needs above her daughter's. My daughter tried everything. She offered promises, begged for forgiveness, even threatened to take me to court. But nothing she said could change my mind. Evelyn's safety was my priority, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even her mother, take that away from her. The day of the hearing arrived, and I felt a knot in my stomach that wouldn't loosen. It wasn't just the tension of the courtroom. It was the weight of the decisions I had made. I was fighting for my granddaughter, for her future, but I couldn't deny that a part of me still wanted to believe in my daughter. I wanted to believe that somehow she would pull herself together and be the mother Evelyn deserved. But as the judge listened to both sides of the story, I realized that hope alone wasn't enough. The evidence, the lies, the debts, the betrayal, it was all laid out in front of the court, undeniable and harsh. My daughter's defense wasn't enough to counter the facts. The judge looked at the papers, then at us, his expression neutral, but his words clear. I have to prioritize the well-being of the child, and based on the evidence presented, I believe that placing Evelyn in your care is in her best interest. My heart swelled with a mix of relief and sadness. The judge had made his decision, but it wasn't just a win for me. It was a loss for my daughter, a loss that deep down I knew she had brought upon herself. As I left the courtroom, Daniel was there, waiting for me outside. He didn't say anything at first. He just smiled, his presence a quiet reassurance. I hadn't realized how much I had relied on him through this whole process. "You did the right thing," he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Evelyn will be safe now." And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. As time passed, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Evelyn was happy, secure, and thriving in the environment we had built together. The weight of uncertainty had lifted, and I could finally see the future without fear of what might come next. Daniel remained by our side, a constant source of support and love. Though he wasn't Evelyn's biological grandfather, there was no mistaking the bond they shared. He was there for the small moments, the bedtime stories, the trips to the park, the quiet afternoons spent in the garden. And I could see in his eyes the same kind of love a grandfather would have for his own. It was a love that was given freely, without conditions, without asking for anything in return. Our little family, though unconventional, was one that was built on trust, respect, and unconditional love. I no longer felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. I had someone who stood beside me, someone who cared, someone who loved Evelyn as much as I did. In Daniel, I found not only a friend, but a pillar of strength, someone who had come into our lives when we needed him most. The house was quieter now, more peaceful. The chaos of the past seemed distant, a memory that belonged to another chapter of our lives. I looked at Evelyn, who was growing so fast, and I realized how much she had brought into my life. She was my light, my purpose, and I would do anything to protect her. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about building a future. And with Daniel by my side, I knew that future would be filled with love, security, and hope. It had been a long and difficult journey, but looking at Evelyn, who was now full of laughter and joy, I knew it had all been worth it. The struggles, the sacrifices, the moments of uncertainty, they had led us here, to this new beginning. We had rebuilt our lives, piece by piece, with love as the foundation. As for my daughter, I had come to terms with the fact that our relationship might never be what it once was. I had to let go of the expectations I had for her and accept the reality of who she was now. But that didn't mean I had given up on her. In my own way, I still loved her, but my love for Evelyn had to come first. I would always be there for my daughter, but my priority was clear. Daniel, in his quiet and steadfast way, had become a part of the family, and I knew we were better for it. Our bond was stronger than any blood tie. We were family because we chose to be, because we cared for each other, and because we had supported each other through the hardest times. Life had a way of surprising us, of bringing us to places we never expected to be, and it often forced us to become stronger than we ever imagined. The hardest moments had led to some of the most beautiful ones. I had learned that even in the darkest of times, there was always hope for a new beginning. With Evelyn by my side and Daniel in our lives, I knew that we could face whatever the future held. We had each other, and that was enough. Sometimes life places us in such difficult situations that it seems there's no way out. But when we least expect it, the universe offers us answers, even by mistake. What started with a simple request for help turned into a journey of overcoming, revelations, and redemption. No matter how old you are or how big the challenge may seem, there is always a new beginning. True strength comes from where we least expect it, and unconditional love can move mountains we never thought possible to cross. I learned that even in the most desperate situations, courage and faith can guide us. And you, what is your story of overcoming? What difficulties have you been facing and how have you found the strength to keep moving forward? Leave it in the comments. Share your experiences because together we are stronger. And before you go, remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. You won't want to miss the upcoming emotional and inspiring stories that are on the way. See you soon, and may your journey also be one of strength and transformation.